Welcome back, YouTubers. Well, today we're going to try to get an engine put on the old sickle bar mower. I ended up picking up one of these 6.5 horse Harbor Freight specials. I was kind of hoping to find an old tiller engine so that I could have forward and reverse fairly easily, but hadn't really seen anything that was worth messing with. Or, you know, I actually had a couple engines laying here, but I would have had to taken 2 or 3 and taken the parts, put them together, and I decided I wanted something that was fairly reliable. And so I'm going to try one of these. I've never bought one of these Predator engines, but they're basically a Honda knockoff. And this one I ended up getting for it was $119 plus tax. And I work on Honda for my job. I work on Honda pretty often, and if these aren't made in the same factory in Taiwan, then they're made based off of the same designs and everything. And on the bigger engines, the carburetors are identical. They're actually Japanese carburetors that are identical. But anyway, I'm going to unbox this thing, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got it out of the box, and here's just one of the pieces of paperwork comes with it. Shows you basically what everything is, where to put the oil, where to, you know, check the fuel or get fuel in it and all that. Basically how to check the fluid. And one thing to note, when you check the oil on a Chinese or Japanese engine, you do it differently. On an American engine, like an old Briggs & Stratton, you push the dipstick all the way back in, or you screw it all the way back in, and that's when you check the level. On these Chinese engines, as you can see in the photo right there, the dipstick, if you want to call it that, is not screwed in when you check the oil level. So you remove it, you wipe it off, you just put it squarely in the hole, but you don't screw it back in. And that's how you check the oil. A lot of the Honda engines I see come in, even though they do have low oil shutdown on them, they have been ran low on oil for quite a bit of their use, because people don't understand that you check the oil differently on these Chinese and Japanese engines. So anyway, you know, this shows you just some of the other things. How to choke it, the throttle, your on-off switch and all that, but just basic instructions. So anyway, I'm gonna do some measuring and see if I can fit this dude up in there. It does have a 3/4 inch shaft, and I think I might actually have a centrifugal belt clutch over in the garage. I'm gonna see if I can put that dude on there. Hopefully it'll be the right size. So I'll be right back. So we are in luck. The clutch that I had sitting out on the shelf for years was a perfect fit. So I'm just gonna tap this on there lightly, tighten the set screw down, and there is a hole for a bolt. And I will put if I can find a bolt, it's gonna be metric, but if I can find a bolt and a washer, I will put that on there too, to keep this on here. And there we are. Tighten this down just to keep the key in place. Make sure nothing's rubbing on the crankcase. I'll snug that down, and I will go look for a metric bolt and washer. Okay, this is the other bit of paperwork that comes with the engine. This is the manual, and I thought that would probably be a metric thread, but if you open the first page, it gives you the specifications. And it says right here, shaft, end tapped, 5/16 24 UNF. So it's 5/16 fine thread. And the other thing it shows in here, talks about maintenance, talks about when you should check the air filter, all that. That's over here. Sorry about that. The sun is playing hell with me here. Anyway, this shows you your maintenance lubrication schedule. Over here it's showing you what oil to use, and we always used to use just straight 30 weight, which it's getting harder and harder to find straight 30 weight. They always want to do this multi-viscosity stuff, but according to this, below 0 up to just above 100, 10W30 is what's recommended, which I just happen to have in a synthetic. And also, you get back here in the back, and you got your troubleshooting, but you get back here in the back, and here are your mounting specifications. And sometimes this will be to scale, and you can literally cut this out, lay it on your piece of steel, and just mark your holes. This one's not to scale, so I'm going to have to, for the mounting plate, I'm going to have to actually measure this out, but at least it shows you. And you've got one here for the PTO end if you're going to mount it that way. But anyway, now I'm going to go try to find that 5/16 24 bolt and a heavy duty washer, and then I can start on making my mounting plate. Okay, well, I did a quick search and I did not find a 5/16 24 bolt, but what I did find was a metric bolt that was really close to that size, and I happen to have a 5/16 24 die. So I just stuck it in the vise, threw some oil on it, and ran the die down on it. So now I have a bolt. And that'll save me spending an hour looking or driving to town, and I can get on with the project. So now to go install it. Okay, bolt and washers are installed. That will keep the clutch from coming off this direction. I've got one set screw on the key, which will keep the key from moving. Now I still need a set screw here, and that's mainly to keep the clutch from migrating that direction and rubbing up against the crankcase. I'm not going to waste the time right now to look for that, because I can remove this one and then just go get one the right size when I'm in town. So right now I'm just going to ignore that, but I will fix that later. I want to get this dude mounted up and everything, and I may need a different belt. And honestly, I'm not even sure if it turns the right direction. So I may have to do some work there to get everything running the right direction. But what I'm going to do now is check rotation and go find a steel plate to use for a mount for this engine. Be right back. Oh, excuse me. Okay, guys, well, I lucked out again on the rotation. If you pull the rope, the engine runs clockwise when you're looking at the flywheel end. If you look here at the mower, it doesn't really matter which way it spins as far as the sickle bar works, because it converts to just a straight line motion. That doesn't matter. But for this thing to drive itself correctly, it does. And so when I turn this, if you can see right up there, if you can see that cog running, and if you see how that's running, that will push down on the wheel, will rotate the tire that direction. Lucked out again. So now all I have to do is get it mounted, figure out belting. Obviously this belt right here has seen way better days. But so far, we're lucking out pretty good. I think this might go easier than I expected. And hey, if we get it going today, I'll have to show you that. Okay, well, I dug through the belts that I have laying around, and just a quick search, I came up with this one. There's no markings that's readable on the old one, and if you hold them up side by side, the old one is a little wider than this newer one. Lengthwise, let's see, it's going to be kind of hard to do one-handed, but lengthwise, they are about the same. Okay, but you have to take into account this is narrower. If it's narrower, it's going to ride down in the pulleys more, which may grip okay, and it may not, but also that effectively makes this belt perform like a longer belt because it's not held up in the top of the wider part of the pulley. And since it goes down in the grooves in the V, then it effectively acts like a longer belt. But I'm going to try to put it on and we'll see. Okay, well, I got it on there, and it is actually a lot tighter than I thought it would be. And it can't be that tight because that means the sickle blade will run continuously under normal operation. Now, I do have clutch on the engine, so I could slow the engine down and then everything would stop turning, but that means also it would stop self-propelling. And I really don't want to push this beast around the field. So there is an adjustment right here. You loosen all these nuts up and you've got a spring right here. And I'll see if I can, you can see they've cobbled it up with a whole bunch of nuts to get that old worn out belt to still grip. And so I'm pretty sure I can take a few of those out and loosen that up. And this is actually how you engage it. I can't right now because that belt's so tight, but you move this lever, which cams this over and pulls that upward. But I'm pretty confident I can get that off of there and we can make this belt work. Okay, I was able to get most of that mess off of there, and I've adjusted it a little bit. As you can see, the belt is still loose, and right now it's engaged. If you go back like that, it releases, and that engages the drive. And you want to adjust this so that the belt is just starting to tighten up when it's engaged. This stuff all floats. You don't want a ton of pressure on it, and it doesn't really need it to drive it. Plus, if you've got just a little bit of slippage here, and say you get a tree that's a little too big or a rock or something stuck in your sickle bar mower right there, and as it's rotating around, it hangs up, that belt right there will give a little bit, slip a little bit. And so we don't want it real tight for several reasons. But I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up, get it to about where I think it is, and then that part will be done. Okay, I think I've got it about where it should be, at least where I'm going to try it. So we're fairly tight right there, and now we're loose right there. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Oh, guys, this project is just going way too easy. This belt here came with the mower, and when I got it, I've had the mower for several months, and I just got this engine. It fits right in between the frame rails. The clutch that I've had literally for years, I don't know how many years, and it was used, fit right on, sitting on there. If you can see, the clutch is just clearing the upper pulley. It's the bolt is just clearing the center of that pulley shaft. Now granted, the pulley is cocked backwards just a hair, but that's because I need to make some spacers underneath this part of the engine and space the engine up just a little bit. Yeah, something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen later. Projects just don't go this easy without there being something to bite you in the butt in the final, or you know, something else, a different project. Somehow I'm gonna pay for this. Okay guys, I've decided that the route I think would be the easiest to go is make a plate to go across here, and then drill the mounting holes for the motor, bolt it to the motor, set the motor up in here, and determine the height and the spacing and everything where it needs to be, because not only does that belt there need to be tight when it's engaged, this belt here needs to be tight. Now I know it's got a clutch, but the point is this whole thing moves when it's engaged or disengaged. And so I can't have this belt tight and engage this belt that's loose, or vice versa. So what I'll probably do is I'll have to put keepers, belt keepers, which are like this right here. That's a belt keeper. And so when your belt is loose but the pulleys are still spinning, it keeps the belt from jumping off the pulley. And so I'll probably have to put a belt keeper around the clutch over there. If she'll focus for me. And it can either be a post like this one over here, or sometimes they're a band, a flat metal band that goes around. But anyway, I'll get it all mounted to the plate. I can tighten or engage. I can engage everything and make sure this belt is tight on the pulley, on the clutch, and everything's in alignment this way, and I can weld that plate in. That way I don't have a bunch of spacers and stuff that I have to deal with, and I should have an even flat surface for that motor to mount to, because this thing's going to get a lot of vibration. So that's what I'm going to do, but first I have to straighten this out. I mean, I may not have to, but I'm going to. I'm going to straighten this out where it's been damaged so that I can have a little more room to move that engine this way and this way to get everything to line up correctly. Okay guys, I got this pulled back a little bit and I removed that angle bracket, but as you can see it's still deformed quite a bit, and you might not have noticed earlier, but there are slots in that, and that was to help adjust this drive belt independently of this belt, so that you could raise and lower the motor, and you could tighten both these belts at the same time, because as I said earlier, when you raise this, it raises the whole thing, and I'd like to be able to use that feature still yet. So I'm going to use a hammer and a dolly, and no, we're not talking Betsy Wetsy here. If you guys don't know about old school metal forming and auto body repair, back when they actually used to repair and not just replace panels, you have a piece called a dolly, and this is nothing like an auto body dolly because it's just a big chunk of steel. An auto body dolly would have curves and sharp edges on some of them. Some of them would have they would be round or they would be square, but basically it's just a large chunk of mass. You put it in behind like this, and then I'm going to use a ball peen hammer because it's what I've got that's got a pretty good amount of weight to it, and I'm going to strike on the other side, and that will, the dolly resists movement, and that will cause the metal to move instead of just bounce and vibrate. And this is welded on, so I can't take it over to the vise or to an anvil or anything. I have to do it this way. So let me straighten that out and I'll be back. Okay, now that's fairly straight. That allows me to move that piece of angle iron up, because before I'd get up here and it'd bind up. But that's fairly straight. I can work with that. Okay, well, I had said I was going to probably mount a plate all the way across, but let's see if you can see. After I started adding stuff to this, I realized it was pretty well balanced the way it is. And if I added a big plate across there, I was afraid it would make it heavy in the back end, and I'd have to be lifting on the handles all the time to keep the sickle bar down against the ground. Because see, it don't take much, but it is front heavy like it's supposed to be. So I ended up using this mounting bracket on the side where it was slotted. Then over here I took some bed rail and slotted it, and then just drilled a couple of holes there in the frame, so that allows me to raise this bed rail or lower it, and raise or lower this bed rail, and that way I could keep the engine fairly straight left to right, because it's already tilted downward when it's running. And this thing has low oil shutdown on it, so I didn't want to be dealing with that. But you can see the pulleys are pretty well in line. I can still get to my grease cert right there, and when you engage it, everything's pretty well tight. So I think, unless there's just something I've totally missed, I think that's going to work. Now I just need to get the hood for it and do some work on it, because it's been eaten out there just from vibrating and everything. It's been smashed real good right there. So I'm going to pound it out, and then it'll be close to time to start it up. I'll have to put the oil and the gas in it and see what happens. Okay, well, the hood's on. I've still got some problems with it that I'll fix later. Like, got a hole right here, and I could use just a little more straightening, but it fits better now. It's full of oil, full of gas. Everything's pretty simple. You got start run on the choke, off on the gas. You got on off on the start on the ignition. So basically, all we have to do is pull it and see if it starts. Let me see if I can do that. Okay guys, it took a few pulls to get the gas to it, but we've got ignition. Our clutch is working. Well, guys, I don't see why that won't work. Another vintage piece of equipment saved from the scrapyard. Thanks for watching, guys. Well, guys, I took the little mower out to the field and mowed the ditch, mowed some briar bushes and junk like that along the fence row, and I hit something, or I just worked a couple of bolts loose right here in the middle where the drive is. Anyway, while I was out there talking to the old guy that owns the place, we were discussing how we're pretty sure, if it'll focus, we're pretty sure there should be a sliding block or a bushing or something like that in there so that doesn't slam back and forth. And it shouldn't be steel on steel anyway. So he comes out with this bushing that one of the girls that comes out and plays dominoes with him picked up off the floor where she works, and they told her to just take it home. Okay, so whoops. Anyway, look at there. Barely any slop. Look at there. Just a little bit of room. This project just keeps falling together way too easily. But I'll take it, because I'm sure the next project is going to be a pain in my butt. So, thanks for watching, guys.